is Alpha Niner calling Science Station Hermes.
Alpha Niner, this is Science Station Hermes. 555.
Roger, Hermes. All cleared. Sector Gamma Delta 4. Request clearance for landing.
That's Roger, Alpha Niner. You are cleared for landing. Switch to station control.
Switching to station control. Sync and lock.
Alpha Niner, be advised Zulu Command when you're ready for debriefing.
Roger, control.
Sir, reading an Antares battlecruiser in Sector 7. Alert status. Clear weapon interlocks. Alert Zulu Command to our situation.
Alpha Niner, scramble.
Roger, control.
Moving into attack position, beginning my run now.
Sir, we lost Alpha 9. Divert full power to shields. Scramble already cracked. Shields down to 80%, sir. Stay on those shields. I need full power. Shields down to 60%. 50% and dropping. Launch emergency distress beacon now.
Yeah, hello and welcome to a new project in English again, which is Master of Orion II, Battle at Antares, which brings me way back to the past. I mean, I remember it was one of the first games that I ever played, and I loved it enough so that in the in the novels that I wrote, but I didn't publish to this point, it was actually mentioned there, though not by name, but only by what you do in the game. So I really love this game, and I have played it again and again for the last 15 years. Yeah, at least 15 years, maybe even more. So yeah, that was one of the best buys that I ever made. When it was a full version on one of the early GameStar magazines, which was really nice. Yeah, but let me get back to the game itself, because the game is extremely old. It's older than all the other games I've done so far, and they have been old by what most people would consider to be a standard of modern games. So yeah, it's probably graphically it's not very good, but if you ask people like me, then from its systems and from its depth, it's one of the games that has never been reached again so far. I mean, it has lots of games that have been trying to achieve what this game was doing, but so far none has really delivered. So it's gonna be interesting, I think. So, what do you do in this game? Well, let's start a new game, right? So, what you do is basically you take control over people that just learned how to get out into outer space, and now are trying to expand into space, which has its own difficulty, like neighbors and space monsters and even other problems that I'll get into later. But for now, we can set the parameters of our game, which will be the difficulty. It has various difficulty levels, starting with tutor, easy, average, hard, and impossible. I say I'll call this mission impossible, so I'll go with impossible difficulty. Then you can set the size of a galaxy. A galaxy can be small, medium, large, cluster, which is a little bit larger than large, and I think the systems are a little bit less scattered, and huge. But I'll go with huge, because I also want to have 8 players, which means us and 7 other spacefaring races which started at the same time. You can also do it with less. I mean, you can also do it with 2 players, but I think it's boring because if you have more enemies, you also have more potential allies, and because there's a rudimentary diplomacy in this game that's very possible, and it's also somewhat fun. So I'll try to use the hugest galaxy that I can get and the most amount of enemies. And then you can also set on which tech level you want to start. Pre-warp is the first. You basically haven't even researched building ships for space travel, but you're just right before that. So you're somewhat in a situation that we are at the moment, basically. Maybe a little bit further, but not much. Then there's average. In average, you start with your first colony ships, and I think 2 scouts, which is probably what most people would do for the first game. Then there's post-warp. I don't know what the difference to that and average is. And there's also advanced. In advanced, you already start with several planets colonized and with some ships and stuff, and everybody starts at that level. But I'm gonna start at pre-warp because I want to be there in it from the beginning. So I'll start with pre-warp. Then you can also set your galaxy's age, which basically sets do you have more mineral planets or do you have more planets that have developed life and water and stuff? If you have lots of planets that have life and water, then it's easier to produce food. But if you have planets that have more minerals, it's more easier to produce warships basically and other stuff that you need industry for. So average is basically a mixture of both, but you can also set your galaxy to organic rich, where it has less minerals but more nice planets. Mineral rich, where it probably has only a very few really nice planets, but very much minerals on all planets. But I'll just go with average. Good. Then there's also 3 very important extra options here, which is tactical combat. In tactical combat, you can actually take control of your ships when they do combat, and you can actually design them yourself, which is a very, very, very interesting thing that I'll be stupid to not use. So I'll definitely keep that on. With random events, you can switch random events on and off. Basically, random events can have good consequences if you receive them. They can also have bad consequences, but they can also have bad consequences for others, for instance, or good consequence for others. I think it adds a little flavor to the game, but if you don't like this sort of random stuff, then it's okay to turn it off. Then Antares attack, as we saw in the introduction video, there's some specific guys called the Antares, which sort of are our arch enemies in this game because they always come to our planets with very advanced ships and destroy stuff, which in the beginning we'll probably not be able to do much against. And here we can basically set if they attack or if they never attack. So if you want to have a more peaceful game and don't want to be so stressed out in your first game, then it's very okay if you switch that off, but I think it's more fun with switching it on. Then you can select races. So basically there are, I haven't made count, but 7, so there are 13 races that are already designed by the game, which I won't all go into, but I will show the pictures, I think. So each of these races are good at some things and bad at other things, most likely. And they're also all very unique. Depending on which race you're playing, you have a little different experience in the game, because each race gets certain values. When we say I want to play as humans have the feats that they are charismatic and that they have a democracy, and that has certain advantages and disadvantages that I won't go into at this point because I think it'll be too much for the people who don't know this game. I will go into that later once we've gotten a little feel for the game. But now in the beginning, I don't want to explain everything. So because I think it'll just be too much for some of you guys. So I think I'll take the Cylons, because I mentioned them in my book, and I actually basically ripped them off in my novel, so it'll only be fair to take them. They're very research intensive, so they can research very well, and they're also very smart. But they're very fragile. So basically, they're coming from a low gravity planet, which means that they'll be having difficulty in settling on most planets because most planets have average gravity, not low gravity, and they'll have problems there. But they're really good researchers. But every race has its advantages and disadvantages, and all have very good playstyles. So it's not like any race is better than others. Though most people would say that research in this game is very important, so even if you're not a good researcher, you'll probably end up with lots of research anyways. So I'll take the Cylons. In order to show at least some of the options that you would have had, you can also just customize a race. Basically, you can just select a picture now, which I'll do for the Cylons, and then you get to this very interesting screen that I'll not talk about too much, where you can basically set the values for your race. So if you want to say I want to look like the Cylons, but I don't want to be as good in research, for instance, then you can change that. You can create your own unique races by using the pictures and adjusting the sliders here. Basically, you have 10 points that you can spend on stuff. There's also some negative stuff that gives you additional points up to additional 10 points, so that you can spend points on more positive things. But I'll not go into that at the moment. I'll just draw note to some of our most defining characteristics, which will be the plus research that we have. We have plus 2 research, we have low G, and we are creative. What this creative means, I'll show you once we're in the game, so the rest is let's just say it's fluff for the moment. We'll get back to the screen very much later in the game, I suppose. So let's just hit accept. Now we can give us a name. I'll just go with that name. The first, of course, because we're a ruler. Yeah, our people are not a democracy, we're a dictatorship, which actually is the standard sort of government in this game, which is the only sort of government that you don't have to spend any points on, and you don't get any points by choosing that. So it's interesting, at least. Now we can choose a color, which will marginally affect how our ships will look and how our planets will look on the main screen. So I think I'll go with blue. I think I'll go with green. So now we can name our home system, and I'll just keep it at Mentar, because it's the default for the Cylons, and we're into the actual game. So basically what we can see here in the center screen is a map of our universe, which is not that big at all, because it's only like, I don't know, 100 or so systems, which is not much by galactic standards. But we're going to see this screen for the most of our time, so I just want to draw a note to that. And we're actually here in the top right part of this universe, in our own system. So we have a sun in the center, we have a planet that we live on, which is basically a lot like Earth, because everybody starts on a planet a lot like Earth, with some exceptions. And we also have one other planet in our system, which is basically a very big asteroid, and it doesn't even have good minerals because it's poor. But I'll probably talk about those things once we're that far ahead to colonize things. So we actually have one colony right now, which is our main colony, and I'll just go into there. And so we can see we have people. At the moment we have 8 million people, or let's just say 8 units of people, because every million of people is put together in a unit, and we can actually tell them what to do. So we have 4 farmers at the moment, 2 workers, and 2 scientists, and we could actually switch that off. But the problem is, if we don't have enough food, we'll hunger to death and not grow. So not having 4 farmers is basically suicide at this point, so I'll just leave it at that. But I can change the amount of workers that we have, because there's not that much interesting stuff that we could build anyways, so I'll go with 3 researchers and 1 worker instead. And on the lower side, we also see a basic look of our main city, which also shows what sort of stuff we already have there, because we have here housing buildings where basically people live. Then we have our capital, which is where our main government resides. If this ever should get destroyed, we get various disadvantages for not having one, but we can build it somewhere else. And we have marine barracks where we can basically train marines and they defend our planets. They're on the lower left. So far we have 3 marine units basically, and we also have a very interesting thing outside of the actual planet, which is a so-called star base, which basically functions as a defensive platform if the planet should be attacked, and which functions also as the main dock where our ships are being built. If we don't have a star base, we cannot build big ships because we need to build them somewhere, and the star base gives us basically some scaffolding where we can put the pieces together, because if we build really big ships, they can't just be built on the ground and then rise. They have to be built outside of the planet. So that's how we are so far. Then there's this building screen that we'll also spend quite a lot of time on. So far we can't do much. We could say we want to generate some money by building trade goods, which basically converts all the production that we have in the moment to money. We can also tell our people to build additional housing, which would convert our production to increased population growth, which is also interesting, especially in the beginning. Or we could build a colony base where we could basically colonize the other planet that we saw in our system earlier, and we can build spies. Both of these things will take quite a long time because we only have 1 worker and we don't have anything researched. So for now, let's just get started on a colony base so that our worker has actually something to do. But more interesting is now, what do our scientists do? Because they also need to do something, because they're not just want to stand around. For that, we have a special science menu where we can basically see that all research that we can do in this game is split into eight categories. We have construction, power, chemistry, sociology, computers, biology, physics, and force fields. So we can now basically tell our people that we want to advance further in, let's say, construction. If we do that, then our people will need to research 80 research points, which, depending on how many researchers we have, will take some time. The entire game is turn-based, so once we end our turn, then the game checks, you have 12 points of research at the moment, and you need 80, so let's subtract 12 from 80, so in the next turn you still have 68 left to research. So if we have more researchers, it'll definitely go faster, but we'll probably need our people for other things too. So what I'm doing now, I probably don't want to explain too much, because if you're new to this game, it'll be difficult to understand why I'm doing that. If you already know this game, then you probably know the strategies that I'm going to use. Basically, let's just say I want to research some buildings that'll help us work better and research better. So we'll do that, because in the computers, one of our next things that are about to be researched is a thing called a research laboratory, which we'll research after the research for electronic computers, which I'll basically want very soon, so our researchers can actually work faster. So let's just do that first, before we do anything else. Now I've selected that. We need 50 points. We have 15 that we generate every turn, because we're good researchers. Every one of our researchers generates 5 at the moment, and we have 3. So it takes 6 turns, because once this total research counter is down at 0, we also need some additional turns where we have a chance to get a breakthrough, but it's not assured for some further time. I think it's about 3 turns, maybe 4 turns, where even though you have already researched the research points, you still have to wait. but it could happen faster anyways. So that's not very accurate all the time. Sometimes you can get lucky and get it earlier, and sometimes you get it 1 or 2 turns later, which can happen. The other things on the right side at our screen are the ones that are interesting to us now. Is, for example, this, which basically tells us how much food do we produce more than we need. So at the moment, we produce exactly the amount of food that we need to maintain our population, which is good. Every million citizens of us needs 1 food, and we currently produce 8, and we have 8 people, so we're fine. If we should produce less food than we need, then we have a problem. If we produce more, we don't necessarily have a problem, though we would probably don't want to do that because we could use the people to produce something else other than food, because food just lets our people survive. We can't build ships out of food, basically. So, and we also can't do research with food. If you picked some perks when generating your people, you can actually generate a lot of money from surplus food, but we didn't do that, so every surplus food that we have is probably more like waste than anything else. So I'll probably try to keep it as close to +0 as I can. If it's negative, then you're in trouble, basically. Then we also have money, which is at the moment 50 BC, which I think is billion credits. So far we get 5 BC if we go to the next turn, because all of our people have to pay taxes. And we also get some money somehow else. So we see here in the view of our planets that so far our colony produces 8 BC, but it needs 3 BC for maintaining the buildings that it has at the moment. So it produces 8 because all of our people pay 1 BC tax, basically, and we have buildings that so far cost 3 BC. So we generate income of 5 BC. So what we're going to do now for the next turns is basically hit the end turn button, and I'll explain the other things later once we've got to see something. So I'll press the button now. Now we see some time has passed. We're not at 3500.0 anymore. We're at 3500.1, which will basically happen every time I hit the turn button. So now we're waiting for our researchers to make their advance. So far now, we have, after 3 turns, we have accumulated enough research points so that we have actually removed all of the 50 research points that we needed, because 3 times 15 is more than 50. So now we have a 20% chance that we'll get the breakthrough in the next round. It didn't happen, now we have 50%. It didn't happen, now we have 80%. Now it happened. So this was a little slow, and now our researchers tell us, hey, electronic computer, direct starship weapons fire, and it's automatically equipped on all ships, increasing chance to hit by +25%. The bonus is lost if the computers are damaged or destroyed. Good, so we have completed our first research, which is nice. The next research is going to be more expensive because it's 150 research points, which since we generate 15 is going to take a moment. So I'm going to hit the button a few times. Oh, now we were distracted a little bit because we found a leader. Leaders are something very interesting and unique to the game, which are basically special persons that increase your abilities in some way. There are 2 types of leaders. They're basically governors that you can send to your star systems and say, go on, govern them, and they'll increase some values of this colony. This is not one of them. This is actually a sort of military commander, which you can give control over one ship, and it'll increase the ship. For example, this guy is a navigator, which means that it increases the movement speed of all ships that are traveling with him or with the ship that he's currently in by one, which basically makes them faster if they want to go somewhere. And he's also a helmsman, which means he has a defensive bonus of the ship where he's in. But actually, he's not very good. He wants 50 BC now, and more importantly, he costs 1 BC per turn, which I don't think is a good investment for someone who isn't really good at anything. So I'm sorry, guy, but I reject. If I reject, then not just go away completely. I have about 30 turns time left to hire him. Oh, I'm sorry. Before he loses interest in us and goes somewhere else, supposedly. So if I change my mind, I could still change it in the next about 30 turns, but I'll probably not. So let's continue with the research then. So now we have 10 points after we started the research. The research is actually through, but we have to wait for the breakthrough still. So now it's 10%, and we did the breakthrough this time. Nice! So Dauntless Guidance System provides friend or foe recognition guidance to missiles and torpedoes. They would target the nearest enemy ship if their first target is destroyed. Optronic Computer directs all starship weapons fire, adding plus 50 to the chance to hit. Bonus is lost if the computer is destroyed. Research Laboratory houses state-of-the-art computer equipment, creating a superior research environment. Generates 5 research points and increases the research each scientist produces by +1, which is really nice. So that's what I wanted from this computers research branch at the moment. The next thing I want is in the construction branch, so I'll get started there. And because our lone worker guy has been working for the last turns, and he's actually trying to construct a colony base, but you can actually switch production around without any penalty, which is a little weird, but it's actually really helpful. So now I can just say, no, I don't want the colony base anymore. Let's construct this research lab instead. And all the production that so far has been accumulated for the colony base, which is about 20 times 3, so it's almost 60, is instead now being used for the research lab, which needs 60 production points, so it should be almost finished. Yeah, you see, it's almost finished. It would need 3 turns. I could hurry it up by spending money, which I do want to, yeah. Depending on how much more production the building needs, it's much more expensive, so... But it's fine now, so I'll just hurry up this research lab. So far we had 15 research points. Now with the research lab we have 23, which is a bit more, because as we have been told, the research lab generates 5 research points completely on its own, even if no one is actively working in there. And every one of our researchers has a +1 bonus, so that's really nice. And our further research is going to be a little bit faster. So let's move on. Anti-missile rockets can only target missiles. They have a maximum range of 15 squares and will fire defensively against approaching missiles if not yet fired in the turn. The chance to score a hit is 85% minus 5% per square distance. Fighter base allows a ship to carry a group of 4 short-range fighters. They carry 1 beam weapon of the best type that they can have, the point defense modification, and can fire it 4 times before returning to the launching ship. So, what I'm actually interested in here is automated factories, because they do something similar to what the research lab did for our research for our production. So it has automatic points of construction when it's built, and it increases the production of the workers working on the planet where it was built. As we've seen now, we've grown actually, because up until last point we had +1 food because we had a new million people, and it was automatically assigned to being a farmer, which is understandable, because if it were somewhere else, we would have starved. So it automatically went to the farmer, and now it went to a new researcher. So our research even got increased, and is now 29. So let's finish that. Yeah, automated factories. 8 industry workers in the building of finished products. Generates 5 production and increases the production each worker generates by +1. Heavy armor. Heavy armor negates armor, piercing effects, and reinforces the armor of the ship, tripling the amount of damage the armor can absorb. Planetary missile base. Contains 300 space units of your best missiles with unlimited ammo. Yeah, all of these 3 things are actually nice. And there's one thing that I haven't talked about too much so far, which is this creative that we picked in the beginning. With the exception of some of the very basic stuff, basically the basic stuff here and the basic stuff here, which is only the first 1 or 2 branches. Actually, the not creative people only get one of the things that we researched. So if I were to go into the next level of construction, and if I weren't creative, I would have to choose between one of the 3 things. Since we're creative, we're automatically researching all 3 of those things. But if you're not creative, then you only get one, which sometimes is a pain in the ass to choose, because sometimes there are many nice things that you need. Actually, everything is helpful to some extent. And if you're not creative, you have to make some, well, adjustments in things that you research and other things that you don't. I mean, some things are redundant. There are lots of things like different sorts of armor and of ship drives. If you only research one of the better ones, then you're probably gonna be okay, because you don't need all of them. But most of the things are actually really helpful on their own. So I just wanted to say that, because we'll always get everything, but if you didn't pick creative, then tough luck, you only get one in the very most cases, unless the stuff that is very cheap and that you get at the beginning. So actually now, since we increased our research and our productivity, I want to go into actual spacefaring, for which I'll need basic research in chemistry and power. So I'll go and do that. First, chemistry. Oh, Administrator Yota, the Elder Sensei. He's actually interesting, at least somewhat, because he's an instructor. He's actually a governor, though. He's very weird for being a governor, because he doesn't actually increase anything at the colony where he's stationed, because he's an instructor, which basically doesn't benefit a colony, but instead it increases the experience points for all ships, which is really nice. But yeah, he's also famous. Famous means that further leaders that you're trying to hire are cheaper by 90 BC, and it's also more likely that you get more and better leaders if you already have leaders that are famous. So actually, even though he only costs 60 and he's of doubtful use to us at the moment, because we don't have any spaceships that require training, I'm actually going to hire him, because I think he could be worth the investment in the long run, by getting just other good leaders, because he's famous, and it's also very helpful to have at least one instructor, and I'm not sure if I'll get another one, so I'll hire him. We see that Commander Hawk is still waiting if we want to hire him, but I don't. I'll now assign Administrator Yoda to Mentor system. He'll not actually provide any bonuses, but he just has somewhere to work now, and I don't know. The leaders can actually get better over time if you keep them for a long while, and I think it also takes into account if they're actually working somewhere, then they get better. So I'll just have him work at Mentor. And yeah, do I need anything? And what does the time say? Yeah, I think this was already a little bit much for the first episode, and we didn't quite see much though, so it's not like we had any big battles so far, because so far we've only done a little bit of research and I explained a few things. So if you're interested in strategy games and really well designed strategy games with a lot of depth, then you probably want to tune in for the next episodes, though so far we haven't really done much except setting everything up to build a big empire in the future. But so far we're only a handful of people on a planet somewhere that have greater ambitions, but we're not there yet. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys at the next episode, I hope. Bye!